Welcome here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on WakeUpCallDT.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT is where you're listening Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. This is a Facebook Live special, Facebook.com/LiveNowDT, and I'm so excited for you to be here in this Wake Up Call Syracuse Football special. Julian Whigham, as you know, from Syracuse Orange Football history, a defensive back for Syracuse, played corner for the team. He is with us every Wednesday for the midweek Blitz. This week we had to change up the schedule a little bit, so Julian is joining me for a special today where Julian and I will be talking, as well as the fact that we will be featuring my Q&A, my video Q&As, with head coach Dino Babers, linebacker Mikel Jones, defensive back Garrett Williams, wide receiver Nykeim Johnson, and wide receiver Taj Harris will all be joining the broadcast of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. So this is a jam-packed, packed special for you here this morning, and I appreciate y'all being here, hanging out with us where sports truly meets life. So what a beautiful thing to be able to do this, to be able to bring this to you. And so, of course, very happy to have you all here today, and thank you so much for being a part of the show. So with that being said, let me bring in the man of the hour that will follow us in this conversation about Syracuse football, and that is Mr. Julian Whigham. Julian, how are we doing today?
I'm doing well.
And so, Julian, for you, I mean, what can you say about what you've seen from Syracuse football? I mean, you and I have talked about it throughout the season. I anticipated that Syracuse was going to be going 1-10 with these last few games. What's been your assessment? Did you feel the same way about it? Did you see 1-10 being more of a possibility than not? How did you take it?
Yeah, so coming to the year, if everything had been according to schedule, no virus, regular season, things go to plan. I thought that this was a 4 to 5 win football team. I felt they still had a lot of the issues from last year carrying over into this year. I thought their offensive line was still shady. Wasn't sure about what they're going to do on defense. And this team didn't have much depth, and it's never been a team that's gotten through a year where most of the team is healthy. There always seems to be injuries at some position group that's really hurting the team. Recently, it's been the offensive line. So I was concerned about those things coming into the year, and then without the all-season, without a summer conditioning program, without fall camp, I think that all of those issues were exasperated in a way that really showed through this year in ways that have become frustrating to watch as fans, as media, and really set this team back. So you think about the offensive line, with the injuries that they had, the amount of young players that are on the field now, and the amount of freshmen outside of the offensive line. There's just a lot of young guys playing, the amount of the injuries that they've had. I think it's set Syracuse back. And when you don't have a conditioning program, when you don't have a fall camp, one that makes you injury prone, you don't have as many guys in shape and ready to go, and two, putting in a new scheme under a new defensive coordinator. I'm sure there's new offensive language that they're using now, the new coordinator on that side of the ball. Syracuse was set up for a major step back, and I think that the things that influenced this season really made the issues that they had much larger and much easier to see, and that's kind of why we've seen this 1-10 season. So not hard to see. It's just one of those things where it's unfortunate, but Syracuse had these problems, coming into the year.
Yeah, speaking here with Julian Whigham here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora in this special that's here with you, where sports meets life on Facebook Live, Facebook.com/LiveNowDT. It's one of those situations where, like you said, there's a lot of things that, have affected Syracuse. They were already kind of behind the 8 ball in certain areas, and this just kind of set them back even farther. No Abdul Adams, no Jarvion Howard, and eventually no Andre Sisco and no Trill Williams is going to affect you moving forward. You bring in a new offensive coordinator, you bring in a new defensive coordinator, you're trying to change a lot of things and implement these plans during the season. And Syracuse, struggling in that respect, as most teams would, and makes perfect sense why they would go through something like this and have the type of struggle that Syracuse is having. And then at the same time, we're just, we're looking at other things that are going on within the program as far as, taking timeouts, scheming, utilizing different things. The fact that a 3-3-5 and Julian, I want to go with you on this. The 3-3-5 is obviously built toward the back end. If you're a defensive back like yourself playing at Syracuse, it would make perfect sense for you. Would be great for you because the onus is on you, and they're relying on you to be, the focal point of the defense. The 3-3-5 is set up against the pass. It's set up to stop a team that, can air it out and beat you downfield in that way. It's not set up to stop the run, and that's exactly what teams have used against Syracuse is running the ball and attacking the fact that there's not four sets of hands in the dirt up front, and instead it's a 3-3-5 built on that back line of the defense. So bring me into that. The fact of Syracuse, having this new defense coordinator in Tony White who wanted to run a 3-3-5, and obviously, there's components of that. I mean, Syracuse's defensive backs are strong, and so it's helpful. But at the same time, Julian, we're looking at a thing where you got to be able to play multiple defenses. It's okay if you have a base, but being able to shift. And I just don't see the benefit of having three players up front, especially when they're running the ball against Syracuse the way that Duke has, and Liberty, and North Carolina, and Georgia Tech, and Clemson. I mean, really anybody in this case. So, what are your thoughts on the 3-3-5 and the fact that Syracuse stayed in it and never shifted to four sets of hands in the dirt when they were getting beat by the run so much?
Yeah, so my experience with 3-3-5 has been as a nickel package, really, when I was under Coach Schaaf and our defense coordinator, Coach Bulla, in 2014, 2015. And we used it as a changeup, and it was a really fun defense because we really only played it when we had an expectation for the pass, right? It was called our Okie defense, 3-3-5. It was an opportunity for linebackers to create pressure. We typically understood that it was going to be a second or third and long situation, more likely a pass situation for the offense. So it was really easy to game plan, and it became a very effective defense for us. And it was a lot of fun to play being a defensive back. I had the opportunity to, at some point, be at every position. I'd been on the outside of corner. I played a little bit of nickel. I'd even played some safety in that defense. And all three positions are a ton of fun because there's different responsibilities. You get to use different parts of your skill set, and as a defender, especially as a defensive back, there's just so much freedom to create chaos. And knowing that the quarterback has to get the ball out quickly, you're just attacking. You're making plays. So as a defense in that situation, when you know what's coming, that defense can be a lot of fun to play in. It can be very effective, and we've seen it used against Syracuse in a way that's been really beneficial to defense. I think of Middle Tennessee State a few years back. They use it. Pitt typically uses it against Syracuse, and they've been effective. And it's one of those defenses where when you know what's coming, it's good to be in. It's a great setup for you. But Syracuse using it as their base this year, the problem has been obviously across the defensive line, not being able to hold their gaps and maintain gap integrity. And the thought process when you're in those kind of defenses is you have to have three guys who take up space. It's very similar to the 3-4. Where you want that big, juicy nose tackle in the middle, and those heavy guys taking up those gaps on the inside. But Syracuse just didn't have that this year. They've still got guys who, I'm thinking about like Josh Black and those cats. They're 6'3", 6'4", maybe 270, 260, rather than the 310 body type most teams look for, right? So the issue is Syracuse has been initially built for that defense up front right now, and that's why we're seeing so many issues in terms of the run game. Like, you've got to be able to blitz. You've got to create pressure, but the number one thing for a defense like that is you have to have, a man-child in the middle, someone who takes up gaps, takes up blocks, and clears things up for your linebackers. And Syracuse didn't have that this year. So it's frustrating. Again, these are things that I think could have at least been helped a little bit had there been a spring, had there been a summer to adjust for, correct for, even make guys bigger and stronger during the offseason. But without those things and just trying to put a defense in, a lot of things can go wrong, and they did this year. And I think while they create a lot of turnovers and were an effective defense, that part up front has been an issue, and it's got to be addressed during the offseason next year. And hopefully Syracuse recruits for their defense a little bit better when it comes to defensive line.
Yeah, that coming from Julian Whigham here on Wake Up Call with Dino Tortora in this football special that we have for you this morning where sports meets life. I want to give a very special thanks to the Wildcat Sports Pub on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York, for being a part of what we've done throughout the seasons here, plural, and what we've been able to do on site on location at the Wildcat Sports Pub on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York, with these home game opportunities and really connecting with the fans and being able to be on Facebook Live on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT and be on site on location. So a big shout out to the Wildcat, a big shout out to Rob Drummond and Isaac Alford who helped me with that. And of course, Julian Whigham this morning here where sports meets life on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Julian, we're going to get into some of these conversations that I've had with the team over these last couple weeks. We're going to get into them in just a little bit. Obviously, my conversations with Dino Babers, the head coach of the team, as well as Mikel Jones, the linebacker of the team, defensive back Garrett Williams, wide receiver Nykeim Johnson, and wide receiver Taj Harris. But before we go to that, Julian, for you, what have been the bright spots? What have been the positives from this? I know we talked about this a little bit, and, to me, Sean Tucker, Cooper Lutz, looking at the fifth and sixth string running backs for Syracuse, respectively. Not only that, some good things from Jacoby and Morgan in the minimal time that he was out there. Obviously, Mikel Jones and Garrett Williams and Afatu Melifonwu and Marlo Wax and so many players on the defense. Josh Black, McKinley Williams, Cody Roscoe. A lot of respect for the guys that are out there doing what they're doing defensively. Nolan Cooney has been fantastic punting the ball. Andre Schmidt is Andre Schmidt as a place kicker for Syracuse. Nykeim Johnson, a big speedy guy. Taj Harris, since getting suspended from the team for that one game after the incident of flipping off the camera, has really come back in a big way. Had just about 150 yards receiving and I think 13 catches. He was 13 for 146 in the home finale against NC State. So there's been a lot of good there. Rex Culpepper coming back from cancer, becoming a starter on the team, an outright starter for the first time ever, and doing what he did initially. So there's been a lot of good moments and a lot of good things for Syracuse to speak about. Obviously, it hasn't turned into wins in this case, but what are your main takeaways from Syracuse this season? What can the team build upon? And as a former player, if you were in the locker room right now, what would you be focusing on in trying to get the guys to stay positive?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The major takeaway, one, I think bright spots have been Sean Tucker. I really loved his game. I don't think Syracuse has had like a feature back in a really long time. I think about Jerome Smith and Tyson, Prince Tyson Belly. Those guys, they really worked in tandem, and they made a good team. I think Rome was the last 1,000-yard back for Syracuse. But Sean Tucker is someone who I have really loved just watching him play football this year. He's a strong back. I think he's been Syracuse's most effective back under Coach Babers. And to see Syracuse have a bit of a run game is encouraging because now there's something to build off of. I think for the last few years, Syracuse really relied on Eric Dungy and his ability to run the football, and he was the main threat on the ground, to kind of go with his arm talent and what Syracuse is doing in the passing game. But now that Sean Tucker's, he's a freshman, he's a young guy, right? So you've got him now for 3-4 years, and you have an opportunity to build off of that. Now you can build off your passing game, having a little bit of run game. You got Cooper Lutz, guys who can come in the screen game on third down, play some football like this. When you got good young backs, you can do a little bit more with your offense, right? And I think Syracuse has missed that for a few years, and it's better when it comes from your running back rather than a quarterback always trying to make something happen. So I think that's a good building block for the offense, and I look forward to seeing what Coach Babers does with that. And then on the other side of the ball, the defense played lights out. I mean, on the passing game at least, right? Obviously the run game was an issue, but the secondary this year, and the linebackers, the amount of takeaways that they created was, really amazing to see with a little bit of preparation time. It just speaks to what that 3-3-5 defense is. It's chaotic. It's frustrating to play against. It's difficult to game plan for because of how much rotation and movement there is on the back end. So it's been really it's been a good thing for like their defense played really well and gave the offense a lot of opportunities. I think their plus minus has to be sky high at this point, right? And typically, if you're a team that's creating a lot of turnovers, you win more often than you lose. And unfortunately, Syracuse offense just hasn't been there this year. But the defense has a lot to build on, and I think on the offensive side of the ball with that run game, if they can get the right guys blocking up front and a quarterback who can kind of play off of those running backs, I think there's going to be some opportunity there. And then to the back end of your question, if I'm in the locker room right now, right? I think there's two different mentalities. If I'm a young guy, I got a ton of reps this year, and I have a ton to build off of, and my confidence going into next season should be, sky high. I always think the confidence boost from your freshman year into your sophomore year is the largest one because you've got that experience now. You know the speed of the game. You know how you fit, and you kind of have a sense of, okay, I know I belong. Because some guys, they battle it, like, oh, shoot, I don't know if I can really do this. But once you get through that first year, like, I know what to expect, and all of a sudden, my guys seem to take off. And I think that's going to be beneficial to Syracuse in the long run, having so many young guys playing. On the other side of that, if I'm a junior or senior, if I'm coming back from an injury, it's keeping my head down and getting back to where I need to be. Or it's, dang, am I going to stay here? And I think we're going to see a big shift in a lot of guys coming and going in this transfer portal and the nature of 2020 free agency now, college football. So it's going to be really interesting to see, like, especially for the older guys, who stays and who goes. But, if I'm a younger guy on this team, I think there's a lot of opportunity for Syracuse going forward because the amount of experience they got this year was invaluable. And I can only hope that means that things will get better in the near future.
Yeah, that comes from Julian Whigham here this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora in this Syracuse football special. And, the fact that you brought it up, college football free agency going to be happening here. And the thought that coming off of a 1-10, the expectation of, moving forward in the season, what it's going to look like, what Syracuse is going to look like after this, to think that, 10 guys, 20 guys may leave is not crazy or out of the question for Syracuse. And with a free year of eligibility to these guys that are seniors, they'd have the opportunity to move forward and continue to play, but play elsewhere and have a potential better look at the NFL. So you can't understate what this year could mean for Syracuse and could hit them twice. Hit them in the win-loss column and then hit them with the loss of players after the fact, either going to the NFL or going to other teams. So Dino Babers and his staff, if they are to be here for sure in 2021, are going to have to be very, very delicate, smart, calculating, and purposeful in all the decisions they make moving forward. With that being said, I would love to share with you some of these conversations that I've had, including those with Dino Babers here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. So let's bring those in this moment, having the opportunity to share these with you. And so we're going to start things off with my first conversation that I had with Dino Babers, and that being about 5 years in and his thoughts.
Year, and obviously a very interesting year, different than anything you probably ever experienced as a coach, but 5 years at Syracuse, wearing the S on your chest, just what that has meant to you, leadership-wise for you, and what it means moving forward, even in a season that's had some adversity on and off the field.
obviously based off of this 5th year, I'd like to have an asterisk by it, but I understand there's not going to be an asterisk. But it's been different. There's no doubt that 2020 has been a different year, and something that you need to grow and learn from. And that's exactly the way I'm taking it. I want to be green and growing about this situation, everything that's going on with it, and not red and rotten. I want to make sure that I acquire the knowledge so I can have the power from the experiences of this later on. The 5 years that I've been here, it's been a blessing. Syracuse to me is a special place. It has special individuals. When you get to meet Jim Brown and Rob Conrad and Larry Zonka and all the icon guys from the past, and hopefully an opportunity to meet President-elect Biden in the future, or even Vanessa Williams. I always thought she was really cool with all the movies that I saw her do with Arnold and all that other kind of stuff. There's some amazing people in the past here, along with our announcers, Trico, and everyone else that's been at this institution. And it's a very proud university, and hopefully I've been leading it in the right way where they can be proud about some of the things that we've done. And hopefully I can continue to do that in the future.
Thank you, Coach. Good luck.
That coming from Dino Babers in my conversation with him about the 5 years that he has been here, and him saying that he wishes there could be an asterisk next to this year. I mean, with everything that has gone on, he wished that he could have that. But speaking about the university and speaking about all the people that have come through it, and he, I thought it was cool that he said Jim Brown and Larry Zonka, but then you mentioned someone who's actually going to be on the show coming up here, and that being Rob Conrad. The last player to wear number 44 for Syracuse, who went on to play fullback for the Miami Dolphins and got to have some time with Dan Marino. So there's a lot of greats, and I do agree with him. The Bob Costases and the Mike Tiricos, the Vanessa Williams, and like he said, President-elect Joe Biden. That's, there's a lot of connection to Syracuse, but he wants to lead them in the right direction, and hopefully he can do that moving forward. Julian, I'd love to get your thoughts on what he said. He wants an asterisk next to this season. He hopes that he has done a good job with Syracuse, and he's obviously shown that he's, done his research on some of the people that have come here. What did you take away?
Yeah, so, I tend to agree with the thought of, you would hope that there's an asterisk next to this season, and, while there may not be in the record books, I think most fans and media will look back on the 2020 season with an asterisk. It's a season where it's been unlike any other, where there's been as little preparation as possible. Some teams are playing, some teams aren't, some conferences are, some conferences aren't, and it's just a season where it's difficult to coach through. It's been difficult to prepare for. It's been a year unlike any other, in football in particular, is a sport built on preparation and being in shape and studying your opponent, studying yourself in a way that is unlike any other sport. And to have to navigate that as a coach, as a player, makes this season uniquely difficult, And so while there may not be an asterisk next to the 2020 season, I think most people will look back and understand, oh, this happened and this happened. And I don't hold it against Coach Babers where this team is, but I still believe that a lot of the issues that Syracuse came into the season with have gone unaddressed in a way that have been spotlighted and must be addressed as soon as next season and with an urgency. And I think that's where a lot of judgment in how Coach Babers has done, or how Coach Babers has done with Syracuse, that's where I think that judgment will come. So if he wants to be, if seen as a coach who's done well with Syracuse, I think next season is going to be that year where a lot of people are looking and trying to see where he is with this program. I think people can forgive 2020 and what's been going on, but we know what's wrong with Syracuse now. It's clear, it's obvious, and it's going to be on Coach Babers to address that as soon as possible.
Yeah, that coming from Julian Whigham, and I agree with that. I agree with the fact that Syracuse is in place right now. My three biggest concerns when they stepped into the 2020 season were, football-wise, beyond Corona, were the quarterback situation, which we still haven't figured out, the offensive line situation, which they still haven't figured out, and the linebacker core, where Jeff Canton-Arku, Mikel Jones, and Marlo Wax have done a tremendous job. So of the three concerns I had, the linebacker core has been, that's my one that's not a concern anymore. But beyond that, the quarterback situation is still a giant question mark. And I would have been putting Jacoby Morgan out there sooner. I would have put Dylan, I would have allowed Dylan Markowitz to get some reps in there. I want to see what I got. I want to see what my future is going to hold. I don't, and Tommy DeVito would have to change a lot of things for me as the head coach to put him out there and have him be the outright starter. And then Rex Culpepper has the opportunity to move on if he wants to, because he is a redshirt senior and he's finished things up. And then, Jacobian's had a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Dylan's had a little bit of nothing. So, that's something that needs to be figured out. The offensive line needs to be figured out. The depth hasn't been. It's kind of like, it's the depth isn't there. The players that were the big bruising guys that came in to change some things were brought in with Joe Adam that ended with Evan Adams moving on to the Baltimore Ravens. So, it needs to change. The years of the Sean Hickeys and the Justin Pughs and, there's so many guys that have come through Syracuse history and the Nick Robinsons and whatnot. And those days are gone. Those days are over. The Lou Alexanders, and now Syracuse has to find those next pieces to come in and change the game here. So that needs to be addressed, needs to be done. I also spoke with Babers about recruiting locally. This is what he had to say.
Kind of keeping with recruiting on that front, we've seen the Servassier Dennises as well as the Stevie Scotts be very successful outside of Syracuse. Is there going to be an emphasis on recruiting local, central, and upstate New York as you move forward, especially in a year where, we've had issues with coronavirus and different states having different rules?
We've always had an emphasis. I mean, we had Stevie over here. Steve, the one thing I appreciate about Stevie is he looked us dead in the eye and said, hey, I would do better outside of this city, that I need to go away. And we respected that. So we always want to start close to home. I mean, I still remember Gabe Horan, and some people had mixed feelings on him, and no, he's in state, we're going to go on him. And we thought we had a jewel until he had his physical injuries. So we're going to always stay close. We're going to always look for a guy. If you don't think we're on the right one, give me a call, okay? Because local is good to us, and the state of New York is good to us, and we don't want to miss on one single guy. Anytime we miss on a guy in state, it hurts me deep.
So we hear Dino say, anytime we miss on a guy in state, it hurts me deeply. He says that Stevie Scott looked him in the eye and said, I think I'd be better elsewhere. When I was talking to Stevie through his recruitment, he told me when we had caught up after we had initially talked, he told me the second time around that he didn't have anything to say about Syracuse because Syracuse wasn't talking to him. And when Tim Lester was here, he was the guy responsible in Schaefer's staff of talking to Stevie, and then after that it dropped off. So conflicting stories here about Stevie. No mention of Servassier Dennis, who wasn't offered by Syracuse and now plays at Pittsburgh, when I asked Dino about that. But Dino said he always wants to start here. He wants to start, in Central New York, and they're good to him. I'm a person who doesn't care about your words if they don't meet your actions. So I'm not to say that Dino is not trying. I don't know his heart. I don't know his mind. What I do see is in 5 years they've had one guy, Gabe Horan, and he was medically disqualified. Outside of that, they have missed on ample opportunities. Tyler Days, Mike Washington Jr., who was told by Syracuse's staff, hey, keep working hard, young man. Your film looks good. No offer. 17 offers around the country. He's going to Buffalo. So I want to believe, Julian, that they want to recruit locally, but in 5 years, I've seen little to nothing to prove that point. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so recruiting's an interesting topic when it comes to how you deal with your backyard, right? and I think it was Tom Blumenthal from ESPN. I can't remember exactly who. But it was a really interesting thought on the unique challenge that Syracuse has in recruiting versus the rest of the ACC, just based on their location versus where everyone else is and who they typically recruit. And Syracuse is a place where their backyard, they seem to have almost gone to the Midwest more often than not, and then obviously Florida and down
now
south.
Hawaii. They're now in Hawaii.
Yeah, very, very interesting. It's just interesting how they go about themselves, but they've never seemed to have a massive, just influence in New York. And I'm not sure if that has to do with, I'm sure like there's got to be data supporting this, but I'm not sure if it's just the lack of recruits coming out of New York. I'm not sure if it's that the talent level is different in those areas, like especially the South. Like the SEC is the SEC because there's more talent in the South. Like I'm not even trying to be a Florida guy, but there's just more players in Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, because they play all year round, right? Like Florida has a spring football season. New York does not, right? Like there's more opportunities to get recruited. And when you're outside running and jumping more often than someone who's inside in the cold, probably playing a different sport, typically development is faster. So you end up with more talent in other areas, especially the South, and teams try to recruit there. And then Syracuse is trying to also hop in there and kind of squeeze their shoulders through, and they're fighting for the backup guys. Like there's going to be the great players from these states, these southern states are going to the Georgias, the Florida states, yada yada. And Syracuse is in the tough spot of trying to fight their way to the ACC and get some of these guys too. And it's a tough spot. And I think that because of how difficult and how unique that challenge is for Syracuse, they've got to try some different things. And while you want them to win in their backyard, it's almost understandable when you see that the challenge outside is so difficult as well. Right, so it's an interesting challenge. I've personally never tried to recruit. This is why I would never want to be a coach trying to figure out the mind of a 17-year-old kid and what they want, because that's obviously decommitments and commitments that changes every day. It's a very emotional aspect, but it's challenging, and I can't fault them. Like, you wish they got those guys, because Stevie Scott obviously is a player. Sebastian Dennis, obviously a player. But at the same time, I'll say I understand it, because you have to key in on guys out of state as well, because you got to find a way to get some of the talent in those southern areas and those Midwestern areas that are playing football all year long. And it just makes up so much of their roster. I think at one point, like in 2013, most of our skill players were from Florida. Right, like our entire secondary was from Florida. Like you got to get those guys. That's who makes up your roster, especially the skill spots. So, I get why Syracuse tends to lag behind in their own backyard, focusing on other guys. But you would hope that they have a brand and start to raise kids and have them show up at Syracuse, because you always want to have your backyard and make sure that your state is orange. And you can only hope that things improve in that aspect.
I just put it to you like this. It's like running for president and losing your home state.
Yeah. I mean, and that comes back to like knowing and just being in certain areas. You gotta have coaches and recruiters who are staples in that area. So Syracuse, they don't. That's the thing too. This is something I've always kind of thought for Syracuse, right? This is not Julian Whigham saying get rid of Coach Babers, but if Syracuse ever is in a situation where they're hiring another coach, I genuinely believe, like, if you really want to have some stability at your head coaching position and always have stability in Syracuse and in New York, you've got to have someone with direct ties to either Syracuse or New York. This is why I thought Marone was a really good plug for Syracuse, because his recruiting, it may not have been heavy in Syracuse. I think we actually ended up losing a kid to Clemson. It was like out of like Buffalo or somewhere nearby back when Marone was our coach. but he was very heavy in New York City to be specific, right? He was heavy, and there was a lot of, like, a defensive end that was coming through, and they had a ton of talented guys out of the city, but it was all because Marone was a city guy, and he had so many connections, and that makes people feel at home. And when you've got people who are from where you're from saying, hey, come here because I understand you, and like, we can make this thing work, that's how you build a brand. That's how you build relationships inside of your community, inside of your state, inside of your town, whatever the case may be. And I thought that's when Marone was really good. And once he left, to a surprise to everyone, I think Syracuse lost that. So I think part of, building those in-state relationships and maintaining your backyard is really about having someone from those backyards, right? And that's the key, I think, for Syracuse, is just the relationships in those areas. And I don't think that this staff in particular is very heavy on relationships in-state and in their backyard. And that's why we see the recruiting disparities versus out-of-state versus guys out of Syracuse or the nearby areas.
Well, and that's the thing, is nobody knows home like home. My buddy Rudy Fernandez, nobody knows Queens like Rudy. And nobody knows Syracuse, New York like myself. So it's just reality. And nobody knows West Palm like Julian Whigham. So, maybe you need to be their recruiter. They pay you a little bit of change in that respect there and get that to you and help you out, Julian. As we speak here with Julian Whigham on this Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, Syracuse Football Special on Facebook Live, on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT. For those of you that are watching this in the archive, it'll be on YouTube.com. You're watching on YouTube.com/WakeUpCallDT. Want to let you know that Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora is live on video and audio every single Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We're on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT, where you're watching right now. And we are on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT, internet streaming radio from anywhere in the world. Want to get to my last thing from Coach Babers. That's the fights of the team. I asked him about this team not giving up, not giving in. Even though their record was 1-8, when they played against NC State, they fought all the way to the bitter end, and I asked him about that.
In this game, despite the loss, so many different players. I mean, nobody gave up. Just seeing the fight in your team and what everyone did on offense, defense, and special teams, just what you can say about their resiliency and the way that they played today, regardless of the record this season.
I appreciate the question. It was, I had to get out of the locker room fast after we did our business and talked a little bit post about the game and the things that are happening out there. And, as a coach, I know, as fans, you may or may not, and that's okay. That's not you guys' fault. But there's a maturity level that has to go on physically and mentally. I mean, there's still penalties in the kicking game that shouldn't be there. We're down in distance. We're hitting a punt, and then we're getting another holding call, and heck, it looked like a 31-yard penalty. They said it was 10 or 15. It looked like it was 31 yards. But it's those little things that have such a huge effect on winning football games. So, it's I look at those guys and I just tell them, keep fighting, because all this apologizing and all this stuttering and all this hesitating in my voice is going to change. And then all of a sudden they're going to be doing it right. And they're going to be doing it right for a long period of time. And you're going to have something that you can consistently look at, and not something that's occasional. And that's all coming to a theater near you.
I like that coming from Dino. It's all coming to a theater near you. I want to go to the next one here, which is also after that game of NC State. Mikel Jones, who got another interception, a hit on one of the players, brings about it. He catches the ball mid-air, and he leads the team in interceptions at the linebacker position. That's what he had to say.
Just what you can say about, obviously the record, not what you guys want it to be, but the fight that was in this team on offense, defense, and special teams across the board, the way that you guys came out in this game and the way that you reacted in your last game in the Dome for the season, just what you can say about that.
I'm excited. A lot of us on the defense, we young, so a lot of these teams, they got to see us again. So, we're talking about it. They got to see us again next year.
Thank you.
So, Julian, Dino says the stuttering in the voice is eventually going to stop. they're going to do it right, and they're going to do it right for a long time. They're going to be consistently good and not occasionally great, which is something he speaks on. And he said, that's all coming to a theater near you. And then Mikel Jones goes, we're young. Y'all are going to have to see us again. So I hear theater near you, it's coming, and I hear Mikel Jones going, you didn't like us this year, harassing you on defense? Well, you're going to have to play us again, because we ain't going anywhere. We're young in the game. So what are your thoughts on the theater near you, consistently good, not occasionally great, and Mikel Jones going, oh, you're going to see me again next year?
Yeah, so I'm going to sound like the old man at this point.
Okay.
It's like I don't care what you have to say as a coach, or go win some games. Like, win a game. Like, and I say this, like, it's just tired. Like, this is the same thing how I was as a player. I had no interest in speaking to the media when we were losing. Just none. Because it's like, we're not good. There's really no more detail that we can give at this point. That, like, we're just not playing well and we're losing games. And it never behooved me to try to big up our team and make us like, hey, well, we're going to get them next year. We're gonna, like, it just, like, that was never something I needed to verbalize because it was obvious, right? Like, obviously you got, and again, I sound really angry or like, you know, frustrated with, but it's just, this is how I always approach it. Like, I'm like, there's nothing to talk about anymore. Like, I get maybe Coach Babers has to answer that question. Maybe, you know, you have to, you know, say whatever to get through it. But like, at this point, there's nothing else to say. There's no movie next year. There's just 12 games. Win a few of them. There's no, you have to see us next year. No, like, you still give up massive amounts of yards. Like, it's just a matter of, like, going out there just doing it. And I think and this is me just being tired, and I hate to put it that way, but I personally don't care for whatever they have to say, because it's at a point where I just want to see games won, you know? So I hate to be the old man, go do something, yada, yada. But it's at a point for me where that all sounds really, really good, and I appreciate it, and I like the rah-rah, but, you know, I've always been someone who appreciates the effort and, you know, the results more than, you know, going out there and talking about it. And I think that's how my favorite athletes have always moved, and I always tried to emulate that, and I just hope that as my favorite college football team, they start to do that too, and just, it's more about the winning than going out there and saying something and hoping it comes true.
Well, you know, and I think that's a beautiful way to put it, Julian, and I don't think that's angry at all by any stretch of the imagination, because the reality of it all is Syracuse, to me, you know, saying it's coming to a theater near you, that's kind of like waiting for Andrew Cuomo to open the theaters. You know what I mean? Like, coming to a theater near you, I'm like, when is Black Widow coming out? Like, that's how I feel about Syracuse. You know, getting their 7, 8, 9 wins consistently, going to bowl games, good bowl games, and whatnot. Is like, when is Black Widow coming out? When is the movie theater going to be open? The same movies have been in the theater since it opened back up. Like, I've seen Liam Neeson enough get on the thing and go, I have a special set of skills. You know, I don't care anymore what set of skills you got. I want to see you win. I want to see you, like, I believe what Ryan Reynolds said in Deadpool. He said, at what point, Taken 1, Taken 2, Taken 3, at what point do you just realize that maybe Liam Neeson's a bad father? So, it's the reality of it all is open the theaters up, okay? I don't want to hear about you opening them. Open the theaters, show me a good movie, stop misplacing your children, and let's win some dang football games. I want to go to a DB now. From DB to DB, Julian to Garrett Williams. Garrett Williams had the first ever pick six on Trevor Lawrence in Trevor Lawrence's college football history. He had that in Death Valley at Clemson, and that pick six helped this game to be somewhat of a game at one point within it. So I spoke with Garrett Williams about the pick six that he returned back for a touchdown. This is what he had to say on that interception and the return on Trevor Lawrence, as well as overall thoughts.
Being the first pick six that Trevor Lawrence has thrown in his career in college, and all of the positives that the defense has done and the countless, the interceptions that have just happened throughout this season, what Mikel Jones has been able to do and so on. Just to speak on some of those positives to build upon, and if you will forever remember what you got to do that no one else did to Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I'll remember the pick, not because it was really Trevor Lawrence, but because it was just my first college interception, and obviously on a very big stage like that against, I think they were the number one team in the country at the time, on national TV. It's always going to be a good memory to have. And as a whole, I just think everything we're doing as a defense is just taking us in the right direction for the following years.
Thank you.
So that coming from Garrett Williams, his first career interception, which ends up going for a pick six, which is awesome. And it's against Trevor Lawrence of Clemson history, and also who I consider the fourth Hansen brother. So what are your thoughts, Julian, on Garrett Williams' play this season, on him having to step in and step up with Cisco being out, on getting his first career interception against a guy like Trevor Lawrence, being Trevor Lawrence's first pick six, and most importantly, if you think that Trevor Lawrence is the long-lost missing Hansen brother that was put up for adoption?
Well, to the point of getting that first interception, especially off of Trevor Lawrence, that feeling is pretty cool. It's one of those situations where you look back on it, it's like, wow, that's a pretty cool accomplishment. And you feel good about it. I can remember, I think it was my second interception was off of Taj Boyd, and Coach Schaefer the day after was like, yo, that was his first pick in X amount of games. I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty nice. Okay. So if anything, I'm really happy for Garrett to share, because that's something that you can always look back on your career when you're done and your body hurts. And you think about all of the sprints that you did and all the different workouts that you did and what it all amounted to. Like, you get to reflect on those kind of moments, and it feels good. That feeling is always going to be with you. And to be able to go back to that place for just a moment makes all of that effort worth it. So for him, he's going to continue to have a phenomenal career at corner. He's already doing a great job. To see him do those things at such a young age, it leads me to believe that this is just the first of many, many accomplishments in his career. So I'm excited for him, and these are things that are going to be with him for a really long time. He's obviously taking it in stride and continuing to grow and get better. He's got excellent technique already as a young guy. So I look forward to the rest of his career and what he does, because he's going to be special. I think he's an NFL talent, and to see the things he's done already just lends its hand to the idea that he's going to be a really special player in Syracuse secondary for a really long time. So I hope the trend of accomplishments continues, and when he gets a chance to reflect on all he's done, whether it's in high school, in Syracuse, and beyond, I hope he gets to enjoy these moments, because they'll always be with him, and they become really special when you think back on why you played the game and why you enjoy it so much.
That coming from Julian Whigham here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. In this Wake Up Call Syracuse football special featuring head coach Dino Babers, as well as numerous players, and of course the alum of Syracuse, Mr. Julian Whigham, who is with me every Wednesday for the midweek Blitz, giving our thoughts on Syracuse, airing Wednesdays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT, as well as on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT. With that being said, two final pieces here, Mr. Whigham, and those are you as a DB going up against these receivers. First and foremost, Nykeim Johnson. I don't understand how they don't find this guy the ball. Wildcat formation, reverse, flea flicker, whatever you got to do, play action this, have him run across the middle, whatever you need to do to make this happen. If you want to fake punt to this guy and let him take it and run forward, Nykeim Johnson is one of those players, like Brisley Esteem and some of the other guys, where you just put the ball in his hands and let him go. It's like a Tyreek Hill type of feel to it. You just give him the ball and you let him take off with it. He outran his defender in single coverage in this last game against NC State. Rex threw a nice bomb downfield, and Nykeim was able to catch it and take it forward. We have seen numerous times how Nykeim will get in front of his defender, catch the ball in stride, and then just speed into the end zone. I wish they would just pitch him the ball at every chance they got. Quarterback option, direct snap. Do what you got to do to get Nykeim Johnson the ball. This is what he had to say when I had the opportunity to speak with him on 2020.
What you can say you've taken away from the season more than anything else about your level of play and the weapon that you are, and if you were to come back, what you could look like as a leader of the offense next season?
Man, really, I mean, just taking away from this season, I just learned just how to just face adversity. You know, we've been through a lot as a team, so with that being said, I just got to make sure that I'm staying headstrong and staying focused, and I don't let my mind go anywhere else and just worry about the task at hand, which is playing Notre Dame this weekend. The next decision that I have to make, so just kind of just making sure I'm staying laser focused is the only thing I'm worried about. That's the only thing I've been trying to do in this entire year with everything that's going on around me. So that's all I'm really focusing on, just making sure I'm staying focused and locked in and having a strong mind.
The only focus that I have is staying focused. I thought that was really cool. Also worth noting, Julian, and I want to get your thoughts on this, the belief by Nykeim Johnson that the best album by Lil Wayne is the Carter 3. Do you agree that the Carter 3 is the best? And also, what are your thoughts on Nykeim Johnson's ability? And as a former cornerback and safety, how difficult would it be to cover a player like Nykeim Johnson, in your opinion?
Yeah, so this is a good question. So to the Lil Wayne point, I'm a Lil Wayne truther, and the answer to that question is always going to be the Carter 2.
The Carter 2?
It's always going to be the Carter 2. That's just standard. But I mean, we grew up at different times. Like I was coming up in high school around the Carter 2. I think Carter 3 came out when I was I'm lying. Carter 2 came out when I was in middle school, and a 3 came out around my sophomore year of high school. But 2 was when I first fell in love with football. That was the album soundtracking my first few workouts. It was the album that soundtracked a lot of guys my age as they grew into athletes. And I think most people, at least in my generation, grew up with the 2. It was the Carter 2 and all of his mixtapes. That's to me where Wayne's classics are. So
yeah.
I got to disagree. With my man with the Carter 2 versus Carter 3. I think it's the 2. I think his mixtapes stick in there a little bit, and then we can talk about the 3. But yeah, man, I'm a Carter 2 truther when it comes to Lil Wayne.
My favorite line before you go into that, and I don't know why it is, but I think it's just how I don't know. There's something about the line, but it's, I walk light so I don't piss the ground off. I don't know why, but that's my favorite line. And then
I say that that's the thing is that rapping became too easy for Lil Wayne, and then that's when he just started, wilding on tracks and just saying, and that's what Carter 3 was, just like a bunch of different. But it's like, what did he just say? But
I can also tell you though, like the one thing too, and I can't do the first part. I can tell it to you off the air. Rudy knows all about it. So does Evan. But I can't say the initial part of this on my family show. But I can say I'm all over this ice cream beat like sprinkles. So I also like that from the No Ceilings, but it's good.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the mixtapes is where Lil Wayne shines. I'm not his biggest album fan, but I'm a Carter 2 truther. I think that's his best body of work that he's ever put out, as a studio album. So I gotta disagree with my guy Nykeim on that one. But respectfully, the guy is an amazing athlete, though. He would have been one of my more challenging covers. I always preferred bigger, taller, longer receivers because for me it was easier to get in their chest. They typically weren't as quick. Me having long legs and ridiculously long feet, the quicker receivers were always going to be a struggle for me if I couldn't get my hands on them. So Nykeim would be someone that you got to give space to. You've got to really be patient with and watch his hips because he's so fast and quick twitched and so has so much agility that he can catch you off of the release. So
Yeah.
if you're not careful, you could lose at the line, and then you could lose on the back half of the play, and that's where he's really dangerous. So he's got some ability, and you're right. It's all about getting him the ball in space. He's got that punt returner kind of ability that I think is really valuable in the slot and has been for Syracuse. Just for whatever reason, they just haven't been able to get him the football, and it could be partially because, they just don't have the time. It could partially as a passing attack. It could partially be because the quarterbacks don't look for him. Maybe plays aren't drawn up for him. I don't know what it is. But yeah, Nykeim is a talented player who, if he got the targets that I think he deserves and should get, defenses would have a hard time with him because he's got a skill set that's, valuable and very difficult to guard as a corner. So, I love his game. I love what he does. And his Lil Wayne taste is a little off to me, but the guy, he's still figuring it out, and I think he's going to be okay going forward.
Get the man the ball is what I have to say. The other guy who's been getting the ball, Taj Harris. Taj had a moment of not the greatest action when he flipped off the camera sitting next to Tommy DeVito. He was asked to not travel to Clemson, and from there we saw a Taj Harris that I was hoping to see. Somebody who is definitely taking the moments that he has, appreciating those moments, learning from them, becoming, progressing as a young man, progressing as somebody in society. And since that, I've seen, I don't know, there's just a different air, there's a different feel. I get a sense that his leadership is there. I spoke with him on the learning from the incident and everything this season. This is what he had to say.
You've had a season where, obviously there's the adversity of, the record itself, but some things where you were out for a game, held out, didn't travel. I know you've learned a lot from this season. What can you say you've learned as a man and as a football player, and just what it's taught you to grow as a human being? Because I know that you're a very important component to this team.
One, I just say, this showed me that I have to step up in any aspect of my life, and be a leader, Once I got, I knew even when I first got here, I wasn't an older guy, but I stepped into a role where I had to become a leader. And I just want to know, I have to take more accountability for things, and just try to be a better leader on and off the field, for sure.
Do you feel like you've gotten that with the team? Do you feel like that leadership's come through?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got a big underbelly of younger guys on the team, and they definitely look up to me. But being a leader is something that I have to work on, and I have been working on.
Thank you, sir.
That coming from Taj Harris. I can honestly say, Julian, listen, when people make mistakes, some people are so quick to write them off. Other times when people make mistakes, you go, okay, you know what? Let's see what they're going to do after. We're all going to make mistakes. It's what you do after, right? What do they say about life? It's always the second act. And so, in Act 1, we're growing, we're developing, or we're moving backwards. We're devolving, whatever you want to call it. But in Act 2, we have a decision. In Act 2, we can either take the positive road, progress, get better, learn from our mistakes, or we can continue to be the villain of our own story. Taj Harris has done the former instead of the latter. He's grown. He's developed. He's working on his leadership. And I don't know how to describe it any other way than I can feel his vibe. I get the sense that he did learn from it. I did not write him off. I hope nobody else did, but more importantly than any of us, and the only thing that really matters is if he wrote himself off, which he hasn't, arguably having his best game a game ago. So what are your thoughts on Taj Harris, the incident, him learning from it, and what he just had to say?
Yeah, so after that happened, the first thing, college football is I think one of the best opportunities and one of the coolest opportunities that a young man can have, because you can make a spectacular mistake like that on national television, and how you recover from it can be an amazing story that you can always tell, that people will always look favorably on. Meaning, Taj Harris for the rest of his life can be like, yo, I flipped off thousands of people on national television. And it will always be a hilarious story. But if he's a solid dude, from this point on, like it's a funny story. It's always going to be, fun to tell people. Like, look at this moment I had, but this is what I learned from it. You can connect with people about it. It's a mistake, but if you've learned from it, and you've grown, it's just an opportunity for you to show like how you can grow and laugh at what you used to be and how you used to think. And I think college football is just special in that way, that gives people that opportunity to kind of look back on things like that. So for Taj, man, like if he really took this moment to heart and realizing that I've got the name of my university on the front of my jersey, the name of my family on the back of my jersey, and I'm representing all these different things, and then you realize that your actions reflect back on them. That can really shape you, especially if you take that to heart. So I think that's a really valuable lesson to learn for him going forward, whether he's playing football or not. I think he's going to play football for a really long time, but it's just a valuable lesson for a young man to learn. And for him, man, it could be a funny story, and it's always going to be a way to connect with people. And if he's grown from it, then his life is all the better for it. And that's what I love about college football, is it's a very unique place to learn these life lessons in a way that no one else gets to experience. But I think I think it's a moment for him to grow, and it sounds like he has. And I think the way that the team went about it, how he went about it, was great. So I can only wish the best for him. Like, he's a great player for Syracuse, and you hope he continues to mature and become the receiver that he's supposed to be for this team, because he's a great player, and obviously someone that this team looks to for leadership.
Yeah, coming from Julian Whigham here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Brother, I know you got some stuff going on here on the beautiful day that we have, and the sun is shining. So I want to thank you for being a part of it, ad-libbing with me this week, and let everybody know that Julian Whigham and I are together every single Wednesday from here forward here, talking about college football, the NFL, and more. You'll see us on Wednesdays, midweek Blitz on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. You're listening on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. And you're watching on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT. As always, Mr. Whigham, I appreciate you. I thank you for everything. And because of you, I feel that I can eat ice cream whenever I want to. Because of you, I know more about Lil Wayne. Because of you, I have had more laughter in my life. And because of you, I have someone that I'm grateful for when I pray to the big man upstairs. So thank you times 1,000. I appreciate you very much, and I look forward to all that is to come as we step forward here.
Man, as I always say, man, Dan, I'm always happy to come on. I enjoy every conversation I have with you, on air, off air, so it's a pleasure, and I'm just thankful that you have me on, man.
All right, brother. Well, listen, I'll talk with you soon. Be well.
Sure thing. You too now.
Take care. That coming from Julian Whigham one more time here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora in the Syracuse Football Special. I want to thank all my guests. Julian Whigham, Syracuse head football coach in his 5th season. Dino Babers, as well as defensive back Garrett Williams, linebacker Mikel Jones, wide receiver Nykeim Johnson, and wide receiver Taj Harris for being a part of today's broadcast of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. As always, I appreciate all of you. I told you where to listen and watch. You can search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on Stitcher, Spotify, MixLR, TuneIn, Podbean, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and of course, YouTube will have the videos on youtube.com/LiveNowDT. youtube.com/WakeUpCall DT. Thank you to our Central and Upstate New York partners, Cafe Cubal, Carvel DeWitt, Wildcat Sports Pub, Avicoli's, Canine Camp Dog Daycare and Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Trappers Pizza Pub, Chick-fil-A Cicero, Honda City of Liverpool, Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, where you can get 20% off having it shipped anywhere in the United States, or you can pick it up in store. Either way, make your purchase and your order online so you can get 20% on me. That's Ma and Pa's Popcorn.com. Use the promo code DT20. That's DT20. And, of course, the Millhouse Market, worth the drive every time. With that being said, have yourselves a tremendous day. Find us on the Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, Twitter at Call DT, and Instagram, because I want to be Insta famous. No, I don't really care about that at all. Instagram at WakeUpCall_DT. Be well. WakeUpCallDT.com is the place to go. And as always, my best to each and every single one of you. God bless. No stress. Do your best. I'll talk with you all soon.